We actually made it live here, Marie. Woohoo!
Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone, from wherever and whenever you're watching. We're really happy to be here live on Facebook, we think, and also here on Zoom. And we're excited to be here to talk about Lisa Brisse's new forthcoming book, The Ride of Our Life. So we're going to start by welcoming you all again and just doing a couple of brief introductions. I think everyone here knows who Lisa is, but maybe not everyone on Facebook does, and perhaps not everyone who will be watching this eventually does. So I'm just going to say a few words about Lisa. Lisa Brisse is an author, spiritual teacher and coach, speaker, as well as an exercise physiologist, wellness heart coach, spinning instructor, and founder of State of the Heart Fitness in Santa Monica, California. And there is an overarching mission in Lisa's work that connects all these different things that I just named that she does, whether it's writing, speaking, coaching, working with people to strengthen their bodies and their minds through fitness. That mission is to help people lead their best lives and live from their hearts. And I think a lot of us here have already benefited from that work, Lisa. So thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
maybe you want to tell people what I'm doing here.
Who are you? So, for
Please
those of
tell me.
you for those of you who don't know, Marie Plasse has, well, first of all, she's an amazing human being. Second of all, she's been a professor of English and literature for many, many, many years at Merrimack University on the East Coast near Boston. And she also happens to be my editor extraordinaire of this amazing book, The Ride of Our Life, Lessons in Faith, Love, and Wisdom from a Magical Horse. I am so honored and touched that Marie offered to be my editor because she, in my opinion, has just taken uh, my book and my story to a whole other level. And I think a measure of a really good editor is somebody that can pull things out of you that, as a writer, you're not always objective. And so you can't really see it for what it really is. And so Marie has just been hugely important in helping me to pull out every little piece of me in this book. So I just want to say thank you, Marie, for you've been my right hand person through this whole process in the last couple of years, in a very challenging couple of years. So I just thank you so much for all of your support and, of course, your incredible editing skills.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. So we're going to get right into it here. We are so excited to announce, and here come the details. So take your notes. We are so excited to announce that Lisa's new book, and once again, that title is The Ride of Our Life, Lessons in Faith, Love, and Wisdom from a Magical Horse, Book One, The Early Years, will be available from Amazon in both the ebook and paperback formats on December 12th. So mark your calendars, you all. You can order it directly on Amazon, or you can go to the order link on Lisa's website. That's www.lisabrise.com. That's Lisa Brise, all one word. And there you can also learn more about Lisa and her work. And we also want to add, very importantly, that Lisa has decided that a portion of the proceeds from this book will be donated to a horse rescue organization in Minnesota. Lisa, do you want to say more about that?
Well, just that I knew from a long time ago, just working with Miss because she was a rescue herself, that whether it was she who told me or collectively we came to that it would only be appropriate because she had such a magical life after being rescued. Um, and obviously, I'm sounds like I'm kind of tooting my own horn here, but I mean, anybody who saw her life and knew her knew she had an amazing life. But her beginnings, the way she started off into this world was pretty rough. So I feel that Miss absolutely from many years ago already wanted to have a part of whatever we are doing as far as books and maybe an eventual movie or series, that she wanted to give back to those in need, those other rescues in need, animals, horses, in this case horses, yes. So there you go.
And so the organization that you've chosen is called the Minnesota Hooved Animal Rescue Foundation, and there will be information about that organization on the website should anyone want to make their own individual donation beyond what Lisa donates from her proceeds.
Yes.
Um,
And I just want to say that, and each book with different segments of Mrs. Life, but since the first one takes place in Minnesota primarily, we wanted the proceeds to go to a Minnesota rescue.
Absolutely. So, and again, most of you here know what this book is about, but I'm just going to give a little brief summary of it for those who may not know, and then we'll jump into some questions. So, The Ride of Our Life tells the story of Lisa's relationship with her beloved horse, Little Miss, the horse, as she just said, that she and her family rescued in her hometown of Richmond, Minnesota in 1982, when Lisa was 13 and Miss was just a year old. And as she tells that story, Lisa reveals the many lessons that she learned from Miss, whose magical wisdom emerged ever more clearly over the years as they grew up together. And this book, which Lisa just mentioned, is the first of four in a series that she has planned. This one covers their early years, from the beginning of their life together up through the spring of 1990, when Little Miss joins Lisa in California, 6 months after Lisa herself had made that life-changing move from Minnesota to California. The other three books will continue the story, so there's a lot to look forward to. So, Lisa, this book has been such a long time coming, and it's been a real labor of love for you. And your work on it has been interrupted a couple of times due to different circumstances, but here it is, finally ready for all of us to read. So I just want to say a big congratulations to you for all of your work and for finally bringing that forward. So we are all so happy that this is finally here.
Thank
So
you. Thank you.
there
It's been
is
a long haul.
absolutely. Um, there's so much to say and so many questions to ask, but maybe a good place to start is just to ask you about the origins of the book, how you came to write this book. You talk in your preface about that moment in 1998, you're riding your bike along the bike path and you had that light bulb moment and you knew you needed to write this book. So tell us more about that. Take us behind that moment for you.
Yeah, I was back at that time. I was working as an exercise physiologist at the Pritikin Longevity Center here in Santa Monica, and my commute was literally the bike path. I lived in Marina Del Rey at the time, which was just a couple miles south of Santa Monica, where Pritikin was, and it was a beautiful day. Wasn't thinking about a book at all, and it was just how sometimes life plops an idea in your head. There I was riding my bike, gorgeous day, looking at the beach, looking at the ocean, and all of a sudden the message said, you need to write a book about all these things that Miss is teaching you. Because at that time I was just journaling like crazy. There were just like lessons upon lessons and wisdom upon wisdom. And it was just in my journal at that time. But I knew in that moment it was like, whoa, okay, I guess I'll write a book about it. Wasn't even thinking about it, but it became very clear in that moment. And when I got home, I literally got on my computer and just started thinking about chapter titles, and all of these chapter titles just like flew out of my fingers. Probably had 10 titles within 10 minutes. That's how it started.
That's great. And just to follow up a little bit, can you kind of just give us the skeletal highlights of the progress you made from there? What was your process from that point? Just like, okay, I'm out here. I know I have to write a book. I went home. I wrote some chapter titles. Then what?
Well, yeah, and it was so I just started writing chapters. Didn't really know what in the world I was doing, but I just started writing these chapters. And it wasn't until 2007, so almost 10 years later, that I was realizing I had all of this work and I had never written a book, like put a book together. So really, I had no idea how to do any of that. I can write like nobody's business, but putting a book together was just like, whoa. So I'll never forget Nora, who was my business partner at the time. She had been to a networking meeting. And I remember her coming to work the next day and she said to me, "Oh my God, I think I found your coach, your writing coach, who's going to help you write this book. She just seems perfect for you." And her name was Jean Noel Basseur. And I gave her a call and we had a conversation. And of course, now, you know, when you're approaching somebody about writing a book and you're telling them basically that you believe that you have this communication with your horse, it can't be just anybody. It has to be somebody that is going to not look at you like you're crazy. And so it was really, really important for me that the person who was going to help me put a book together was going to understand the communication that can happen between animals and humans, and wasn't going to scoff at it. And Jean Noel, I mean, immediately I just knew she got it. She got it completely, and that was the end. And she just started. So how we worked together at first is I would send her a chapter. First off, I kind of would tell her what it was all about and kind of how I saw it. And at that time, it was just one book. It had evolved to four because Miss lived so long and she continued to give me so many lessons even after she has passed, and in 2017, which is the fourth book. But she just, how we worked together is she first wanted to see my writing, of course. And, I have to say that there was this little self confidence that I had, that I knew I could tell stories. And, when I sent her the first thing, first chapter, and then we got on the phone and talked about it, and I remember the first thing she said, and she was so gentle, and I just so appreciate her for that, because she again, she wanted my writing to be the best it could be. But she said to me, she said, "You're an amazing storyteller." And she said, "But your writing is a little bit like high school writing."
Ooh.
Huh? What does that mean? And basically what she said is that I was writing too many words and I needed to learn how to cut down the words, say more with less, basically. And after I got over that little ego blow, because you just think, oh, I'm a great writer. Self-confidence here at an all-time high. She humbled the core, humbled me to the core about that. And I remember I would send her a chapter and I'd think it was really good. And she'd come back and she thought it was really good, but there were always things that we could tweak and work on. And I just remember being like, I'd always have to we'd do this over the phone. I'd email her the chapter. She'd take time. We'd schedule a call. She'd record the call and we would discuss, and she always wanted to bring out the best, just like Marie. But she really, really worked on my writing and how to say things. And I know that after every chapter, I would have to take about 4 or 5 days. I say in the book, it was like I had to ride my little Huffy bike after my sessions with her, because I was like, but I knew, I'm like, "Lisa, why did you hire her? You hired her because you want to be the best writer that you can be." And so she definitely took me to task, and but she ended up, I feel again like bringing out the best of me in my writing, which only continues as you continue to write over the time. So, and then, my gosh, I was writing, and in 2009 took a big detour. That's a whole other story. And I'm just going to say the short end of it. I ended up writing another book, had to put Mrs. Book on the shelf because I ended up writing a book, another story in my life called Michael Jackson, The Man in Our Mirror, a reflection of our collective soul, which is a whole other story we don't need to go into now. But that actually detoured me. I had to put Mrs. Book on the shelf for 6 years. And then I started writing again after I released that book in 2014, and here we finally are. And found Marie a couple of years ago as my editor. So, long story.
So that's what we mean about this being a long time coming, right?
Long time coming. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So, yes.
But that's a beautiful and important process you described there with Jean Noel.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk more a bit later on about, more of the details of your writing process. But I wanted to say a few things about what I found in the book as a reader that I think other readers will be interested in, just by way of giving them a taste or a preview. And then I want to ask you a question about that. So what I noticed reading this book many times, many times now, is that this is a book that has so many different dimensions. And I wanted to just mention three of them for all of you who are so eager to read it. And then, as I say, I want to ask Lisa a question. So first and foremost, obviously, this is the story of a very special and sacred relationship between a young girl, you, Lisa, and her animal companion. And it's about the wisdom you gained over many years from that relationship with Little Miss. But at the same time, the book weaves together that story with the second thing that I noticed, and that is that this is a story of a young girl growing up and trying to find her place in the world, right? With all the confusion and drama and excitement that story involves. And that's a universal story, right? That we can all relate to. We've all been through our version of that. And also what that story does too, I think, and I haven't told you yet this, Lisa, this was not on my last set of notes to you, but what that story does too, it strikes me, is quietly insist that this girl's story, this young girl's story, is important and deserves to be told slowly and in detail the way you tell it, and in the way that takes her and her feelings seriously and shows that they matter. So this book gives that girl a voice and a presence, and it makes sure that she's seen and heard. And that hasn't always been the case in the lives of young girls. Even if you look at the history of literature, right, some of our most, all of the coming of age stories we had to read when we were in school, they're about boys, right? Huckleberry Finn, Catcher in the Rye, and that has begun to change, but that's relatively recently in the history of literature. And certainly, if you look at the history of girls, there's a whole lot we could say. So I found that a really touching and inspiring aspect of this book. So that's the second thing. And then thirdly, this is also a spiritual story, right? It's about learning to listen to your heart, which is something that's very important to you, Lisa. And it's about learning to pay attention to ways of knowing that are different from what we see and know with our rational minds. It's about awareness of something beyond our individual selves. It's about faith in God or the divine or whatever you want to call it, faith in the abundance of the universe, and about all the wisdom that can come from those beliefs. But those aren't easy or simple beliefs to stand in, right? Or even to speak about in our kind of cynical, materialistic, anxiety filled and fear driven world. So to me, it's also courageous that you just get out there and say that stuff.
Mm.
And that's, part of what's most important about Miss and this work for you. So I'm not sure how consciously you put all that stuff in there, but it was there, very much there for me as a reader. So finally, here's the question.
Mm-hmm.
In all of this, right? Lisa, amidst the richness of the stories that you tell here, um, what, if anything, is the one thing that's most important to you? Is there something that is the absolute heart of this book for you? What do you want us to take away ultimately from all this?
That's a really good question. And I would say, especially in this first book, because it's kind of a coming of age, it starts when I was 13, and this book ends at the age of 20 when I ended up moving to California and miss it. The last chapter actually ends with her landing, so to speak, on a big horse transportation truck, but it ends on the night that she arrives. Um, and what it took to get from the moment that I rescued her, my family rescued her when I was 13 and she was a year old in 1982, to those 8 years to 1989 when I first left California to miss coming 6 months later in 1990. It really, like I say, it's a coming of age, and but I would say the key thing of this book is following one's heart. And I go into detail of my kind of teenage angst at that time. I think a lot of teenagers, if not all teenagers, go through a certain kind of angst because we're all trying to figure out who in the hell we are in this world, and where do we fit in. And a lot of times we don't feel like we fit in, and there's this, expectation that we have to fit in. And it's a lot of pressure and the emotions, we're just not totally developed in ourselves. And but the general message of this book is following one's heart. And when I started at the age of 16, after my first trip to California, thanks to my Aunt Diane, who brought me here for an extended vacation, it planted a big seed in my heart. California all of a sudden became something that I couldn't get out of my being. And so this book is really a lot of my struggle of, do I stay in Minnesota where everything is known, my family, the place where I grew up on the lake was just my animals, my horses, my friends, to yet this calling from my heart that was like, I think I even used the example in my book, and for those of you from Minnesota in the summertime, you know what I'm talking about, is the buzzing mosquito in your ear when you turn out the light. It's like it just frickin' doesn't go away. And so this calling that I was feeling, and yet I was also suppressing it because it just didn't feel logical. As humans, we're taught to be logical. We're taught to ignore our heart and our intuition, and we're taught to trust this more than this. And that's what this first book is really about, my inner struggle, not even knowing what I was struggling with a lot of the time. As teenagers, we don't. But then realizing that my heart wasn't letting me off the hook. It was saying, no, you need to follow your dream. You need to follow your passion, or you're going to die a spiritual death. And it had nothing to do with, my family, all of my family, my cousins, everybody, my friends who I loved, my growing up on the lake. I mean, I loved where we grew up. So it had nothing to do with that. But sometimes life calls us and we don't always understand why. And I just remember, when I finally got the courage. I mean, it wasn't even courage. It was like, to me, life or death. You got to take this leap of faith, Lisa. And so my desire to live in California was there, but it wasn't just, oh, I want to go live in California. It's, oh, and I want to bring my horse there too. Really? I mean, logically, there were all the reasons why that just was insane. I didn't have a job here. I didn't know anybody here. California was way more expensive than central Minnesota. And you want to, okay, it's one thing if you go, but you want to bring your horse and you're going to believe that that's possible. And at that time, I was reading books about, You Can Have It All by Arnold Patent, thanks to my Aunt Diane as well, and Stuart Wilde, Miracles, thanks to my Aunt Joanne Brisse. So I guess the bottom line of this book is really coming of age and listening to your heart, and that truly set the tone for the rest of my entire life and what I became about. Even my business is called State of the Heart Fitness, because it's not just about physical heart, it's about nurturing and taking care of your emotional and spiritual heart, which always knows our truth. Always, always, always. This can lie to us, but this will always tell our truth. And that's always been my passion. It launched me into how I lived and approached the rest of my life.
Well, thank you for that. And that's so right. And you hooked onto that idea at a pretty young age. I mean, it takes people sometimes a lifetime to get to that point. And that's why I hope that this book will find its way into the hands of younger readers as well. And especially I hope it finds its way into the hands of some girls
Mhm.
of that age as well, because well, I won't go into a whole lecture about that, but I think we all understand, what can happen to throw them off.
And what I want people to believe, and I always have, is that life is magical and miraculous. That is the natural state of being. I think we as humans have dumbed it down because we don't believe that, we think dreams are just for certain people, and that I totally disagree with, that we all within our hearts have dreams and passions. And if we followed those, and it takes a leap of faith sometimes, but that is the center of our true peace and well-being on this planet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of what you just say, though, makes me think also about not only that message that you just outlined for us, but again, kind of who is this book for? We just mentioned maybe younger readers, or obviously it's for everyone, but I just wanted to ask you a little bit about how you thought about your audience for the book when you were writing it. Obviously, people who have horses and who love horses are going to love and understand your book, as will anyone who loves animals. And I'm assuming you were thinking of those kinds of readers. But I'm curious, what other thoughts you have about the audience for this book. Did you have a special audience in mind, or who are you hoping to speak to with this book? Who is this for? Who should read this?
Well, obviously, the horse lovers, the animal lovers, that's kind of like a no-brainer. But to me, and what has kind of personally bothered me is when people hear that I'm, been writing a book about my horse. Oh, that'll be a great kids book. And I'm like, yeah. And I have plans to make some children's books from this, because Miss gave so much material. But no, like yes, it happens to be about a horse, but it's really just about life. It's about life. And Miss just happened to be a huge part of my teaching and my learning about what it means to be human.
Mhm.
So, I know, as we're always supposed to find our niche and be like, we've got to narrow it down. But I guess it's for any human being that is feeling like there's more to life. There is more than what just meets the eye, and there's like some inner itching or something. And I think it's just about, for those who know that there's more, but they really don't know how to access it, maybe. And I think my hope was that I want people, because I feel like my life has been very magical and miraculous. I've had my challenges, and I'm in one right now, as you know, dealing with cancer and all of that. But there's always gifts, and there's always magic, and there's always miracles right there. but we got to keep our mind and heart open. So I think that's anybody who's looking to have a experience the magical and the miraculous.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great. I wanted to just talk a little bit about one of the other things that I enjoyed most as a reader of the book, and to give people, again, just a little bit of a sense of what they'll see when they open your book. And then I have another question. But one of the things that I enjoyed most as a reader of your book, Lisa, was the way you actually shaped the chapters to bring those ideas out that you were just talking about. And from what I understand, it was your plan all along to build the book around the different lessons that Miss taught you over the years. And I just love the way you weave together the chronological narrative of your life on the one hand, and then the reflections on the lessons and the wisdom that Miss gave you on the other. And maybe because of my work as a teacher of literature, I pay a lot of attention to form and structure. And for me, it's always interesting to see the writer's craft, to see the creativity and the art that goes into communicating and shaping the story. So your chapters are set up so that certain moments in the story you're telling about your life growing up and moving to California, they lead naturally into a discussion of the lessons or the wisdom Miss was revealing to you at any given time. And then what I really love and what often happens is that then you move past that to your own further reflections on how the lesson from that moment in the past applies more broadly to all our lives in the present. And that works so well to showcase the lessons. It's a pattern that we see in the book, but it's not overdone. Not every chapter is structured that way, so it doesn't become tedious. But at the heart of it, at the heart of the structure, is that wisdom that you got from Miss. So I'm wondering if you could give us a typical example of the kind of lessons that Miss taught you. What was a situation that you could describe that led to the revelation of a lesson? And maybe you want to just talk about something, or you want to read to us from part of the book. But show us one of those lessons.
Yeah, I would say, well, I mean, let's just talk about her first lesson. And it's in chapter 2, and the chapter is called "Don't Judge a Horse by Its Color." And you know, here I was, 13 years old, and I was obsessed with the Black Stallion, not only the books but the movie that was out. And I had two ponies, Brandy and Tessie, growing up. But I remember at 13, I was like, I'm ready for a big horse. And the vision I had in my mind was the Black Stallion. And I don't know if any of you have seen it. Of course, some of you probably have. And if you haven't, you better go see it or rent it or whatever you need to do. But there is a scene in that movie in particular. It was a boy and this wild horse on this island, and he tamed the horse enough to get on his back and to run on the beach and his arms in the air. And it was the most surreal. Ugh, I just get chills thinking about it. And I remember I wanted to be that kid. I wanted, and the relationship that he and this horse had, I longed for that relationship. That, and I had it with my ponies, but like I said, I was ready to advance to the next, level. So that's who I had in my mind, was the Black Stallion. I wanted to find it. The horse didn't have to be black, but I was ready to. And in central Minnesota, there was no beaches per se like that. Lots of wide open fields. So I would settle for running on a horse like that through the fields. So that was my vision. And I wanted a horse that was ready to go now. Well, I don't know why, but I was, in looking through our local newspaper and the ads, my eyes stopped on this one ad that was not even close to the Black Stallion. So I don't even know why I stopped, but it said something to the effect that malnourished, orphaned yearling filly needs a home. $375. And I'm thinking, malnourished yearling Filly just means a young female. Not the black stallion at all. Just didn't match with what my vision was. But there was something about that that touched my heart. And I convinced my mom and dad and my brother on a summer evening to go take a look. She wasn't at all like the black stallion. She was this scrawny, somewhat emaciated little filly yearling who was a dark gray with black mane, black tail, black legs. But she was pretty much skin and bones. This woman had rescued her from a farm. Miss had lost her mother, and she, wasn't well taken care of. And so this woman rescued her to find her a home. And I don't know, there was just something about her that night, her eye, the love in her eyes, something that transcended my 13-year-old girl's vision in my mind and went straight to my heart. And I couldn't walk away from her. And I remember telling mom and dad, after we left, because we were going to go think about it. And I just remember telling them, I think we should get her. And I remember mom saying, really? I mean, first we'd have to nurture her back to health. There were no guarantees of that. And it would take a couple of years before I could even ride her. So why? That wasn't even in my vision. But the point of that chapter, don't judge a horse by its color, is all about, and this is what we see in life. We're so apt to judging life by appearances. And if we just believe what our eyes tell us and what we're fed in our minds, we miss so much of the beauty of life. And I feel like that is what Mrs. First lesson was to me, was that she captured my heart. She caused this 13-year-old girl to abandon her original vision of what she thought she needed, and she allowed the universe to give her what she really needed, and that was this little miss. And so yeah, when I talk about, the reflections of what that taught me is let's not be so quick to judge life or each other, obviously, by what appearances tell us, and we could talk deeply about, color of skin, or how somebody may, appear to us in various ways, or life, we think it's this way. But that's not necessarily the truth. And so it's finding the beauty that lies within the heart. And then she ended up growing into the most magical unicorn ever. So that's probably the first lesson.
Right, right. And it's a beautiful one, and one particularly, I think, poignant for someone of the age that you were when that one came to you, right? Because that's the age where we start to get all caught up in that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Mm-hmm.
I wonder too, you were a teenager when this started, right? When these lessons started, and I wonder, how aware were you at the time that these lessons were coming? I mean, it sounds like in that chapter that you did reflect somewhat on that in that moment when you were a kid, but how much of these lessons did you understand at the time, and how much of them became clear to you later on as you grew older and reflected? Was it a gradual process of realizing that this wisdom was coming from her? Was there a huge epiphany about that? Or, I don't know. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't aware of it at the time in this first book. Not at all.
Mhm.
Maybe in that, that chapter, don't judge a horse by its color, maybe I was like, huh, well, that's interesting. How I was willing to abandon. I mean, I was like on a mission to find this horse, and how I just threw it right over my shoulder after I saw her. Like, she just was, again, nothing what I imagined. So other than that one, and what's interesting is that I didn't even realize all of the things that she was teaching me in those years until I wrote this book. Like the writings that when I initially started writing back in the 90s when the light bulb came, and I was writing about our relationship in the 90s, which we were already in California. And that's when I really became aware. And it was actually on a ride in 1993 in the evening, when, and I first, what I would say, heard her voice speak to me, and I mean, it literally was a voice as though we were talking right now, and it was in that moment that I realized that she was communicating to me, and she had a kind of a mission, that she was here as what I call her, a Zen master in the form of a horse, who started once she knew I was aware, that I could hear, that I was aware and tuned into her and could hear her. It was like, oh my God, the lessons were just, the life lessons, like through her example, were just like, are you watching? Are you paying attention? So, but it wasn't until, so I started writing this part of our journey with this awareness, of course, that, whoa, man, she was already teaching me stuff back then. I just wasn't aware of it until, I started writing this book, and it was like the things just were coming out. So,
Right, right. And we'll hear more about that 1993 moment in the second book, right?
yes, yes. You got
Yeah,
to,
so you just kind of answered my next question, and it goes back to something about writing that writers and teachers of writing often say, and that is that writing itself is a process of discovery, right? It's through the process of writing that often we come to know and understand certain things. And there's a professor of writing who wrote a book, and there's a quotation from that book, and he says, "We discover what we know by writing it out, bringing up from our tumbling mists of thought and intuition those concepts we hardly knew we had." Um, so it sounds like, at least for these early years, the actual writing of this book helped you put together some things about that early part of your relationship.
mm-hmm.
Um, is there anything that you can remember in particular that jumped out at you as a new discovery as you were, writing your way through these early years? Or was it all that way?
um, say that again. What's your specific question about that?
Well, you said earlier that it wasn't until you started writing this part of your story that you understood, the different lessons that were
Yeah.
coming to you from her. So it seems like, at least for these years, the process of writing kind of
Yes.
made all that stuff clear to you. Was there any one thing that you understood suddenly about that as you wrote that, sticks out in your memory?
Hmm. Um, I think just that, wow, the more that started writing about it, just the deeper it got. Like
Hmm.
I was just like, whoa, and I didn't even realize that was kind of a lesson, and that was kind of a lesson. It just was kind of in my head. But until you, and that is the beauty of writing. Like when you start to really write, and I've been writing in a journal since I was 12 years old, and it's been my therapy basically since then, is like when you start writing, it's the train of thoughts that come, and you discover so much about yourself. And I just didn't realize how much depth was in those first 8 years together. I
Hmm.
had ideas in my mind, but it wasn't until I started writing that I really, like, whoa. So yeah, I guess that would be the answer to that question for you.
Right, right. Thank you. So I want to just kind of shift gears here and get a little bit deeper and explore a little bit more about, an idea that's central to your book, which is humans and their relationships with animals. I mean, that's the obvious topic of your book, the relationship between you and Miss, but it's a topic that shows up in a lot of different ways, even beyond that relationship in the book. So, I was hoping we could look into that a little more. And one of the things that stuck out to me that you mentioned a number of times in there is the special bond that exists between children and animals.
Mhm.
You talk about how kids and animals just seem to come together and understand each other, no barriers.
Mhm.
They share a very intuitive, very natural kind of relationship. And that's what you had with your ponies, right, in your very early days. And you were lucky enough to have parents, one of whom is here, to support you in your love for horses. And you acknowledge that with a lot of gratitude in your book. Why do you think it's so important for kids in particular to have animals in their lives? What are the gifts that come from that? And what would you say to those parents who have a kid, begging them, right? And maybe they hesitate.
Mhm.
What would you say to them?
Well, I'm biased, but I would say it's absolutely imperative for children, and the reason is because, and even when I was a child, animals were my comfort. They were always my safe place. I felt like we just understood each other, and I think because there's a natural bond, simply because animals and children energetically recognize each other. And what is that? That there's no, again, we're not in the human logic, we're not in the should haves of how we need to be as human beings. They're in that magical realm. They're in that the eternal moment of now. And so I just think that there's just this, there's recognition there, like attracts like. And for me, like I say, my animals, growing up with animals, with my ponies, but we also had dogs and cats and chickens and goats. And I just always knew where there was just this safe, cozy place where I was understood and I understood them. And animals for me, and especially Miss and my horses growing up and throughout my life, have always been, our world, it can feel so chaotic and frenetic and out of control. And, you know, my horses have always been my touchstone, my reference. Like, it didn't matter, no matter how crazy my adult life seemed, being with Miss was always like right in alignment with the universe, right in alignment with God, whatever the divine, with nature. And it kind of put everything else, it just put everything in perspective. And so, yeah, I think, I was lucky and fortunate, and I'm so blessed. And I thank my mom and dad over and over again for them. When your kid says you want a pony, you got to have some space and you got to have the means. And, I got my first pony, Brandy, when I was 5 as my Christmas present in 1974. But she was the pony down the road from the farm family that I was absolutely in love with. And I think I just wore my parents down. All I said was, "Oh, I wish I had Brandy. I wish I had Brandy. I wish I had Brandy." I think they were like, probably, "Oh my God, what are we going to do with this kid?" And again, luckily we lived out in the country, and my parents never grew up in the country. They didn't grow up with horses, so it was a real leap of faith for them. But I know my mom has always said that, I just knew, she knew that if they had the means, that this was an important thing. And I'm so grateful because I feel, my horses and my animals have just kept me grounded and have gotten me through my teenage years and all of the craziness of the human world, if that makes sense.
Right, right. And it becomes clear in the book, what a special gift that is. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Um, and as you said, you grew up with a lot of different animals, not just Miss. You had your ponies, other horses, goats, chickens, dogs, cats. So your book is about your relationship with Miss and all those other animals, but you also dedicate your book to all the animals on the planet. And so I think there's a wider um, kind of point or relationship or issue that you're bringing up there too. And it's a very beautiful dedication that you write in the book. And I'd really love it if you'd read it for us.
Okay. Let me see here. I did pull it up, so let me just got to put my glasses on. You know, I'm at that age. All right. So, the dedication. I dedicate this book to all of the animals who, in their own unique way, selflessly and tirelessly give of themselves to the cause of human awakening and enlightenment. In their humility, purity of spirit, and reflection, they not only anchor and balance the often misaligned energies of the human race, but also give what we rarely find from another human being, the experience of unconditional love and healing. And so, with profound gratitude to the collective animal soul for reminding us of what is true, I thank you for gracing planet Earth with your beautiful presence. None of us would survive, much less thrive, without you.
It's so beautiful. I don't think I've ever seen it put quite like that. Um, and you wrote that to honor and express your gratitude to the animals for all that they give us, for reminding us what is true, as you say. But it also seems with that and with these books as a whole, you are trying to remind us of something as well. Maybe there's something even bigger that you have in mind there. Um, why is it so important for us to remember the animals and all that they do for us right now?
Well, in case we haven't noticed, the world feels a little bit crazy right now, right? In various ways. And I wholeheartedly believe that animals and nature are here to basically keep the human species from destroying themselves until we can align with our hearts and then the truth of who we are. I believe that we as a collective species have somewhat derailed from what is true, again, aligned with our heart. Animals are always, we look at them as simpler creatures and that they don't have the intelligence that human beings have a tendency to really pride themselves in our intelligence. And I would beg to differ on that because I think there's a certain level of intelligence, or let's define intelligence here. I remember reading a channeled book back in the 90s, and they were asking about animals and their souls. And I remember the quote in the book, or what was said, was that, you humans think that because you have the ability to deduct and reason, you have a logical mind, you can say, well, if this is true and this is true, then this is true. And so you think that that's a level of intelligence. And yes, it might be. But, well, what if there was a higher intelligence where you didn't even have to go through the steps, you just knew? And and I feel that animals and all of nature just knows. And, birds, we chalk up animals' intelligence as instinct, as though it's something, like less than. Well, it's just instinct. They don't even think about it. Well, exactly, because they just know. So when do birds know that it's time to fly south? It's like on one day they feel something and they just know. And I think we as human beings have that ability as well, but it's been so programmed out of us. And for us, it's called intuition. We get those instincts, we get those gut feelings. But what do? We again, circling back to following your heart, the logical mind keeps us out of our heart and keeps us out of that knowingness. And so I think our real challenge as a human species is to learn from animals, to observe them. Yes, animals, certain animals have to kill each other to survive, but they're not killing out of sport because it feels good to kill an animal, So I just feel that animals are here as our angels, and they come to us in our personal lives. Miss came to me, and yes, it's a mutual. I took care of her, she took care of me. I learned from her, she learned from me. But I really believe that animals are here to ground us humans, and if we can get out of our egos and thinking that we are just the superior beings, um, and really just step back and observe them and observe their love and observe their kindness and observe their present momentness. They are our teachers. They are our greatest teachers. They are right here. They are angels in animal form, and there's something to be learned from all of them.
That's so perfectly said. Thank you for that. There's a writer that I've been discovering in the past year or two who writes about the wilderness, writes about, spending time out in nature to kind of get back to that other kind of knowledge you're talking about there. His name is Scott Stillman.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he has a book called Nature's Silent Message that's really good if
Mm-hmm.
anybody is interested. But thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So as we kind of get towards winding up these questions and maybe allowing other people to speak, um, how are you doing? Can you answer just a few more
Yeah.
questions? Right? Everybody doing okay? Yeah. So I just wanted to, come back full circle with a couple more questions about writing and your writing process. We're definitely talking to readers here and prospective readers, but I think it's possible we're talking to some other writers here or would-be writers anyway. So I have a couple more questions about writing. You mentioned how you had been journaling for years and years, when it came time for you to write this book. And certainly, there's a big difference between that kind of writing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And putting together a book, right? Even though steady journaling, makes you more confident, more fluid as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
But you recognize there was a big difference between that and putting a book together. And that's when you decided to hire um, Jean Noel. And you talked way at the beginning of our discussion about, how you worked with her over the phone, chapters back and forth. But I'm interested in what your process was as a writer on your own before you talked with her about any piece of writing that you gave her. Like, what was your daily writing routine or weekly writing routine? Did you keep to a schedule or did you have a system? And, how did you manage the work of writing a book while you were working full time in, your other career?
You know, Writing has been like breathing to me. Once I discovered that I was kind of a writer, and it started with my sixth grade English teacher who had us journal every day at lunchtime. And I remember, I didn't really know what journaling was, and she explained what it was. And it's just your, what you put on the page, whatever you're feeling, whatever you're. And I'm thinking of my mom still has some of those journals, and it's pretty classic to look at the mind of a 12-year-old and what happened at recess when Jerry socked somebody in the eye. Ouch, that hurt. To, I even did some illustrations, but um, I remember at the end of the school year when she says, "Okay, last day of our journal writing," and I remember the kids going, "Yay!" And I remember being like, "What? Why are they excited?" Like, no, I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue writing in my journal because I don't know. It just was like right for me. And so I have journals since I was 12 years old. And, people who know me know I have I don't know. I don't even know how many books and books and books. But so to me, it was just an everyday process. And as an adult, it just, and as a teenager, it just was my therapy. It was just like I could get everything out of my head, when we're like stressed or worried or we got thoughts about things, and, my head would just be like ready to explode. And I'd go to write and I could just get it, uncensored, just write it onto the page. And I always knew I was done writing when I found peace in my heart. I was like, okay, I'm done. And so writing to me has been therapy. It's been my greatest therapy of my life. So I just naturally would write before bed every night for years and years. Now, I have since gotten out of that habit, but I'm trying to get back more into it because it's, but as far as, writing chapters and writing books, sometimes I literally would be training a client and I would be hearing like a book chapter in my head. And it was like all I could do just stay focused. Lisa, you're training this client now to get home and to get on the computer and just let it all come out. So it just, you've probably heard, artists, musicians, or whatever say that, they almost can't even take credit for their writing because it comes from somewhere. And I think that, when you train that muscle to be listening, on other levels, you already can feel when it's coming through. And so in regards to writing books or whatever, that was just how that worked. Like I made time to do it because it was almost like I can't. And, I've heard like Elizabeth Gilbert say, like, if you don't grab that idea when it's in there, it's gone. And so like even with my phone, like if I have an idea or a thought about something, I'll put notes in the phone because every time I say, oh, I'll remember that. That's a great something. It's gone. And I'm like, no, how could. So anyway, so that's what I do is like whenever something comes to me, I make a note in my phone and get to the computer as soon as I can and write. And so does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And we're lucky enough to have the results of all of that. So yay for us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, just to finish up with one question, maybe for people who may want to write, we've all heard that saying that everybody has at least one book in them, right? So, Lisa, what would you say to someone who might want to write, who might think, they have that book in them, but they haven't started to write yet? What would be your advice to them?
Sit your hiney down and just do it right now. And
That's right.
because there will always be 5 million or more reasons why you think you can't write or you can't write a book or everything. And all of it is BS. I'm just going to say it. It's all BS. I will never forget, I had a life coach back in the late 90s. And, we were talking about, I was like, yeah, one day I'm going to write that book, but I'm a little bit nervous about writing a book because, I'm used to kind of a private life and I'm kind of, I don't really want to be, all that. And she started laughing at me, and not at me, but chuckling. And I'm like, what are you laughing at? And she says, it's funny, just what you're telling yourself that's preventing you from starting this book. She's like, first, let's write the book and then we'll worry about, your privacy or whatever it was. So I became aware of all of the reasons in our mind that we tell ourselves, whether it's writing a book or why we can't start on a project that's kind of been calling to us, or why we can't get moving on our dream because we have all these reasons. We automatically go to all the reasons why it can't happen. And whenever I think of that, I always think of Walt Disney, because when I go to Disneyland and I think, this all started with a thought, one thought in one human being. And if he would have gone with the millions of reasons why this couldn't have worked, we would have never known Disneyland or Disney and all of their beauty. But he believed, and his story is incredible of how he was persistent. And so I just say, the only, and what I'm going through now, obviously, you know, and dealing with what I've been dealing with cancer, it really brings the drives it home that the only moment we have is right now. And you know, I've been guilty of like, oh, I got books I'm going to write one day. I'm writing them now because none of us know. None of us know how much time we have. And so just stop with the reasons, stop with the excuses, stop with whatever. That is just idle chatter. I call it the saboteur voice that doesn't want us to shine, that doesn't want our heart to, you know, be fulfilled. Just sit down and do it. And I don't want to hear any reasons why you can't, because none of them have credence for me or whatever. I don't know if that's the word, but if that makes sense.
Right. And that goes back to what we said a long time ago, right? About what our heads tell us and how we need to get into our hearts. And that's what's going to write the books or
Yeah.
do it, do everything.
And
So,
the mind is so judgmental, like, you know, and if we start like censoring ourselves and, oh, I'm not going to write that because no, just get it out and with no censor, just do it.
exactly, exactly. So you did it. And this book is done. And now you get to share it with the world. And that has to feel really good. So, again, congratulations.
Mm,
And you
thank
talked
you.
about writing other books. So can you give us a little hint about what's next for you as a writer or what you're working on now? What are you thinking up?
Well, you know, I've got all these books in my head, which can be a little bit maddening sometimes. But of course, I've got three more books to write of this journey. So I'm assuming that after the most of the second book are the chapters that I started writing in the 90s already. So it's more about now just organizing my thoughts and getting that book out. You know, I don't know, maybe in a year or so. I don't know.
So I'll be getting an email tomorrow with those chapters.
All right, Marie, it's time to start. Um, yeah, no, I won't do that to you, but yeah. So working on after the first of the year, I'm gonna start working on that, and I'm currently working on the revised edition of the Michael Jackson book that I put out in 2014 because 7 years has gone by and there's a lot more. I've grown, clearly I've grown, and there's things that I'd like to add to that I feel are really important for me anyway to add to that book. And so looking to release that probably in January, the revised edition. And then I have a couple of books in the field of health and wellness that are in there too, but those are going to have to wait a little bit longer. I got missed books to write right now.
It all sounds good. And we look forward to those.
I hope so.
So I think at this point, we could open it up for from people who are here. At least you go ahead and field those questions and call on people as you wish. So I guess we could invite everyone to unmute themselves
Or I,
and
yeah,
talk to Lisa with your questions.
if anybody has any, or maybe I answered all your questions. Who knows?
Hi, Lise.
Oh, is that Cheryl?
Yeah,
Hi,
hello.
I'm Cheryl.
No question. Just want
Yeah.
to say hi.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for
Oh,
showing up. And Cheryl, actually, this talking to Cheryl brings up a good point. She had asked me months ago because I know not everybody is a book reader, but they like to listen to books on audio. And so she asked me if I was thinking of making an audiobook, and the answer is yes. So, because I have really learned to appreciate listening to books on digital while I'm walking, it's just such a great way to go through books. So, to answer your question, yes, and hopefully, I got to look into this because this will be the first time that I've put a book on audio, and I want to be the one to read it.
Right.
So, I got some. That's some homework I need to do. So let's.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. You're
Lisa,
welcome. Yes, who's that? Is that my
Lisa,
Uncle Modest?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got a question here in your comparison. You know, a good comparison is those artists that write music and they write all the stuff down and they create songs within seconds or hours, or they have the wheels turning all the time.
Yes. Yes. I know. I can
And
relate.
and that's what I think you're doing too.
I know. It is. It's absolutely like I said. And what's amazing to me is like when I'm writing like a, whatever I'm writing, sometimes sentences will come out and I'll be like, "Whoa. I would have never thought to write it." Like it's almost poetic and I would have never thought to word it in that way. But man, I'm like almost kind of like observing going, "Wow. That's that's amazing." Like so to be a part of that flow, I mean, and I think it's really just being when you get your head out of the way and you just allow this energy to flow through, this creative energy, whether it's in music or writing books or whatever it is. And we all know that when we get involved with, some of us, like like to build things or like to make bracelets or like to whatever, art or anything, that you step into that river of creativity, and that is the greatest place to be. I mean, once I'm in the flow of writing, it's just like, oh, I just don't want to get out.
Well, keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And it means a lot that you're here. Thank you. I love you. Anyone else have anything they'd like to ask or comment on? It's a quiet group. Wow. Okay.
Did they fall asleep?
Hello, everybody out there.
I am so impressed, Lisa, by your level of commitment and the multi-levels that you are speaking on. And Marie, what wonderful, wonderful questions, and the synergy between the two of you with the questions and the answers was brilliant. I love your dedication to the animals, and I love your commitment to the animals and your sense that we need more communication with the animals. I wondered if there is any little part of your book, a few sentences or anything else that you might like to read to us.
Oh,
It doesn't have to be long, but I would love to hear it. I know I'm getting a book. I'm getting a book for my sister who couldn't figure out how to be on Zoom, who adores her horse and is so excited about your book. But I would love if you would, if you feel up to it, read a little bit. It could be a few sentences. It could be whatever you feel like reading, or any part.
okay. Marie, do you have, since you have read my book about 5 million times now, do you have anything that, any favorite part that sticks out in your mind?
I actually do, but I don't know if we want to give that away.
Oh,
My one of my favorite moments is the last couple of paragraphs, right, where you're reunited with Miss, but that's to kind of give away the ending, and I'm not sure I would want to do that.
right.
I don't know
Well,
if you
ha
want to read some of chapter 2, like we were talking about before,
sure.
or
Yeah. Let me pull it up here and let's see what we got. Um, so I do have chapter 2 up, which I was talking about earlier. Um, and so I talk about, my first insight from her, where, don't judge a horse by its color. So let's see. This was Mrs. first lesson for me, and to be honest, and as superficial as it may sound, before I saw Miss that night, a gray horse wasn't even an option for me. I don't know why. Maybe it was because I had the black stallion from the movie on my brain, and finding a horse with similar characteristics was what I had in mind. But besides her color, the other huge and somewhat non-negotiable criterion for me, or so I originally thought, was that I wanted a horse that I'd be able to ride now. And with Miss, it would be at least 2 more years, assuming she'd even overcome an extremely unforgiving first year that left her extremely malnourished. There were simply no guarantees. So what happened? What was it that allowed for a fairly profound transformation to take place in me that night? I mean, Miss wasn't at all what I wanted, but apparently the universe knew she was exactly what I needed. Regardless, whatever it was that nudged me to choose her, spirit or even a divine intervention of sorts, I am deeply grateful that it got my young ego's agenda out of the way and allowed my heart to do the choosing. Clearly, my heart knew something I didn't. It knew the truth. Thinking back, I learned so much from this very first experience with my dear little Miss that it set the tone for how I've looked at life ever since. Most importantly, I learned that despite how things may appear on the surface, whether it's a person, a situation, or a set of circumstances, it's not necessarily the whole truth, much less any of the truth at all. In fact, I've learned that our physical eyes can be horribly deceptive and lead us astray, and yet we have a tendency to believe and judge all that our eyes can see. Think of beauty, for example. Often society seems to have a set of standards for what is considered beautiful. But according to that standard, Miss wasn't necessarily a beautiful horse to the physical eye at that point in time. In fact, one could argue she was far from it. Yet beyond her appearance was something more powerful, a crystal clear beauty that emanated naturally from her soul. And the more I got to know her and feel her kind and gentle sweetness, the more beautiful and radiant she became. Who hasn't experienced someone's innate beauty when we get to know their goodness and feel the authenticity of who they are? Yet sadly, we often miss what's really there when we only believe and judge what we see. Sometimes we even look right past a person standing before us if their outward appearance doesn't catch our eye, even though they may be the one who is loving us for us. For me, this was Miss. In her soul's way, she was loving me before I even recognized it. And maybe this is what I could feel. Maybe this is what pulled me in and allowed me to see beyond my original vision. Had I fixated on the package of what I thought I was looking for, in this case, a horse of a different color, I would have easily missed her beauty, not to mention the gift of a magical lifetime, with that ever so meek and unassuming soul standing right there before me. I honestly can't imagine how my life would have been had I dismissed my sweet little girl because she wasn't pretty enough or the color I was looking for. Thank God something deeper and more profound, I would call it love itself, was able to see the truth for me, giving me the opportunity to choose differently. Not only did it open my heart to her, it opened my heart to life. Again, a miracle. Mrs. Powerful Example taught me something huge and transformative. It was to resist the temptation to judge life and others by appearances alone, and instead open my mind and heart to the truth, beauty, and love that lies beneath the surface. Just like other things in life that challenge our souls when it's difficult to see the gift that's there, I think of what I'm going through right now. It's only when we shift from our mind's perspective and the false ideas we've been taught to believe and instead embrace the heart that the true gift is revealed. Looking back to that summer in 1982, it could have been so easy to overlook that scraggly gray filly out at Rolling Hills Ranch. Who knew she would be the greatest teacher in my life, ready to take me on a ride I never could have imagined? Who knew there would be books waiting to be written about all that we would learn and experience together over the next 35 years? Thank God I didn't believe what I saw with my eyes, instead went with what I felt in my heart. Just like we should never judge a book by its cover, as it may be the best book on the planet, I learned to never judge a horse by its color, as it just might be the best horse in the world.
Yay.
So,
Beautiful.
Thank you for reading that.
What's that, Marie?
I just thank you for reading that. And
Thank you.
it,
That was really beautiful and very inspirational.
Hmm.
Went right to the heart.
Thank you.
I told you it was good.
Thank you, Marie. Yes, you did. And
It's,
and that's why I think, this was just the beginning, the very beginning. And I think that's why it's just so important for me because Miss was so magical. And the things she taught me about me and life, and so much that all of us as humans can relate to. Um, I just am so beyond grateful. And I just want to I want people to know her the way I knew her. And I had the gift of knowing her for all of these years and still do.
Hi, Lisa.
Who's that?
Shay.
Shay. Hi, Shay.
Hey.
Welcome. Nice to have you here.
Oh, I'm enjoying this so much. If you can understand me, I'm Southern.
I got you.
And I'm not on Zoom because I don't know if you would care for my holy pajamas, which are my favorite.
oh, come on, let's see.
But I was thinking with you reading that part of the chapter in 2, the audio is going to be great. I'm sort of going in that direction myself, bad eyesight, but I really enjoyed your voice and hearing that. It just gave me some more ideas, but don't worry, I'm going to get the book. I've been bugging you forever.
You have.
Get this book out. And just that connection of animals that we have. I knew from the very first email, because you don't, spirit doesn't have stoplights or stop signs, and me being 3,000 miles away, I had that connection right away with animals with you, and I knew it. And I learned so much from you through Miss, and just that connection with animals, because they're nothing but love. That's what they are. You don't worry about how they, want to criticize you or why are you doing it this way or that way. They just love you. And I want to give that same love back and to people. It's a little bit harder with people, but
Right.
but with animals, that's their whole reason for to be,
Yep.
is to make others happy, to give what they can give. And sometimes I wish they can talk, but in saying that, if you will watch them, if you will pay attention, they are talking with their actions.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm just happy for you. I'm just so happy that we're on the threshold of number one.
Mm-hmm.
I look forward to it. And I just wanted to say hey and see if you could understand my Southern twang.
Oh, absolutely. And I love it, Shay, that you spoke up. So thank you so much. And you have been a huge support through all of these years with this. So I'm excited that it's time to share it. And it just reminded me of something. I after Miss passed, as you can imagine, that was the biggest loss of my life. I mean, since I always described us as two little tree saplings that grew together into these trees, and so when she left her physical body, it was it shook my world, and those people around me knew that, and anyway, the grief, I believe, and my kind of loss of reference in this physical world, I feel, kind of contributed to my experience of cancer, and some of you know that. But I went to a animal support group for grief and loss. I didn't even know they existed, and a therapist, had told me about this, and so I went a few times. And I'll never forget what I loved was the people that attended these meetings, all walks of life, people that you would never, again, talking about judging how we would see them in, like, out on, if you saw them outside of that room. I'll never forget this one guy. He was probably in his 40s, and he was kind of this macho guy. And when he walked in, I'm like, wow, really? Like, if I saw him outside, I would never, again, we judge, right? I would never think that he would be coming to an animal loss support group much less that he would have a connection, again, my judgments, what we come up with these judgments. And I'll never forget what he said. He said a lot, but I'll never forget. And I even put it in my book because it's so right on. He said, and he got all choked up. He became, instead of this macho guy, he became who he really was in this little, and this is what I believe of all of us, is that we are, we have a lot of armor that we portray, our persona that we put out into the world because we're in protect mode. And that isn't often who we really are. And if, that armor is because we have these really soft hearts. And he had the softest heart. And what he said was in fighting back his tears, although he let them out too, he said, not only do I miss my dog, but I miss who I was with him. Oh,
Oh,
and it's exactly right. It's like animals. They allow us to be who we really are. They give us that space. And, for some of you who saw my videos when Miss was around on Facebook and stuff, I have my little Miss voice that I talk to. And that, I think that was the biggest, other than losing her, that I could touch and kiss, was that I lost that space to be that part of myself with her, and I think that's what animals do, is they give us a space to put down the armor and just be who we really are. And I think that is why animals save human beings.
beautiful.
So, anybody else have anything they'd like to share or say?
Rita, you have a hand on your square. Did you have a
And
question?
my hand is up. Hi, teacher.
Look at you all proper.
Uh,
By the way, we'll take Rita's, and if we have one more after that, and then we'll send ourselves on our way. Go ahead, Rita.
so you rescued Little Miss, but as with most, if not all rescues, inevitably the people say, I rescued them, but really they rescued me.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say about how Miss rescued you?
Oh, well, so in so many ways, but I think, in my teenage years, um, that went on into my early 20s. It's those formative years, and I personally was never a drinker, and in high school, of course, everybody, that's what my classmates did, and no judgment of it. It just, for whatever reason, it's just something I didn't want to do. And so she allowed me to have a purpose, and she got me through and also into my adult life, how we can be so disillusioned by, life sometimes, and, the world. But she always gave me that safe place to remind me that I'm okay. And, I think we all, on some level, have this belief that we're not okay if we're really honest with ourselves, because that's what we're taught. If we don't fit into a certain box or these rules of these human constructs that human beings have created and we've all collectively agreed, and so there can be a lot of angst and frustration of, I've always felt like, ever since I was younger, that I was thinking of things. I was thinking about changing the world. I was always very concerned about the planet and, its state of being a long time ago already, before, we're still dealing with that. But Miss just always gave me that place to say, you're okay. You're okay. And all that you think and all that you feel, it's exactly who you are, and you're okay. So I think that's how she saved me numerous times over the years of, and so that's, that's what's been the hardest since she has not been in her physical body is not having that place on this planet, to know that she was standing on a piece of land, a couple hours from Santa Monica. I always knew where I could go. And so when that wasn't there anymore, it was a huge, profound adjustment. And I'll just say I felt extremely lost. Didn't know where to put my feet. But anyway, it's a long story. But then she really started giving me messages from the other side that said, I'm right here. I know I'm not in my body, but I'm still right here. So, whew, yeah. So there'll be a lot to talk about in that fourth book too, about all that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for the question. Anybody else? One more question, and then we'll call it a night, or not, or any thought. Jen, did you have? I don't know if Jen is still here. Maybe she's gone.
She signed off.
Okay. I didn't know if she had.
It was bath time. She messaged. It was bath time for Allie, I guess. Yeah. So I guess if there are no other questions, I just want to say thank you, Lise, for taking the time to share all of that with us, and thanks to everybody here. I just want to remind everyone again of the title of the book. It's The Right Life, Lessons in Faith, Love, and Wisdom Magic Course. And I just want to share my screen for 1 minute to show the cover. And I don't know if Lisa can enable sharing for me.
Let's see if I can.
You disabled it as.
It did? Does that allow you to share?
Disabled participant screen sharing. So you go to participants and allow, maybe.
Let me see. Allow. Let's see. I'm going to make you host so that you can do that. Oh, then you might have to sign off.
Okay.
Is it something that I could share, Marie?
I just wanted to share the cover. I don't know if you can get it up.
Let's see. Hold on.
While you're looking at that, I just want to say that not only was it a pleasure working with Lisa on editing the book, pleasure working with her uncle, Gary Mason, who designed the cover that you'll see in a minute. There's Gary. And also to see the beautiful cover photo that was taken by Lisa's friend, Stacy Whittle. So hopefully we can get a look at that before we go.
Yep. Hold on here. Let me just pull it up if I can. And let me see here.
We'll begin and end technical feats.
What was that, Marie?
We're going to begin and end this meeting with certain technical feats.
Oh yeah, I know. Sorry about that, team. Okay, let me put the share here, and I know a lot of you've already probably seen this, but we'll do it anyway. And I'm gonna share the screen here. And yeah, thank you, Marie, for acknowledging. Yeah, and yes, a big shout out to my uncle Gary Mason, who is the designer of the book cover. And he has been my graphic designer for many, many years with my business, State of the Heart Fitness. And this picture is taken by my dear friend Stacy Whittle, and this was on Mrs. 30th birthday. So I ended up getting to the beach. My dream of, that 13-year-old girl's dream of riding her horse on the beach. It was a one-time deal. And I had to wait a long time, 29 years. But we got there. Uh-oh, I got somebody on.
I think that's Cheech.
Cheech, turn off your thing.
People in your house are not muted.
Anyway, yes. So let me see if I can mute them. But yes. So that's
okay.
That is the cover, and yes, Stacy did take that picture, and it was the most magical moment of my entire life.
It's a beautiful cover.
It is.
And thank you, Mr. Gary Mason, for all of that. And I know that Lisa and I were the special PIMAs that we became, but it all worked out. PIMA stands for pain in my you know what.
Because Gary would send us the design and we'd be like, can you just tweak? Can you add a comma there? Can you tweak? And so, anyway, yes, we became Pima's pain in his arse.
Right. So once again, everybody, remember you can order the book on Amazon. You can go to Lisa's website, www.lisabreeze.com. Spread the word, share this with your family and friends. Christmas is coming, holidays are coming, and be sure to leave a review on Amazon or any other book site that you frequent. That will be really helpful. So thank you, Lisa, again, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And my website doesn't go live until later this week. So just if you go there, you're like, what? It's not there. But it will. I'll make an announcement when my my website is live. So stay tuned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you. Just thank you. And Marie,
And
thank you.
your love and light, Lisa,
Thank you,
and
Shay.
from the East Coast.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, and thank you, Marie. Thank you, Gary,
Thank you, Lisa.
Dad, and Rita,
Can
and
we pre-order it now, or is it not until December 12th?
well, I'm going to make an announcement of that. I have to make sure that it can be pre-ordered, but I think it's going to be able to be available. Well, the ebook will be available on, I think, on the 7th. But
Oh,
we'll see.
hey,
So, okay.
hey.
What autographed copies?
Oh, if you want an autograph copy, we can arrange that. So
Yes, I want you to sign my book.
I am honored and I would be happy to. So we'll work out an arrangement for that, Shay, okay?
Okay.
Wonderful. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here and thank you for your support and your love. Joanne, Joe's, hi, Aunt Joe's. Thank you for being
From
and I want to make sure.
bye from Mexico.
Yes, yes, I love it. And Diane and Gary and
Hi, Diane and Gary.
Monica and my Aunt Cheryl and Uncle Mattis. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Night, everybody. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Bye.